everyone, this is Josh Rubin from East West Healing and Performance, and today I want to talk to you about the thyroid. Do you really have hypothyroidism? What are the patterns of hypothyroidism? Those are the things I want to talk about. Now, if you study the work of, I'm going to look at my notes, of course, as I talk to you, of Datis Karazian, he talks about the 6 patterns of thyroid function. Now, out of those 6, there's one of them, primary hypothyroidism, that requires thyroid replacement therapy, which is a true thyroid dysfunction. There's a problem with thyroid. You need thyroid replacement to actually help with that. Of course, all of these require nutritional therapy, but I'm just saying this one, requires thyroid replacement. Now, I'm not a doctor. I'm not telling you to go on medication, go off medication. I'm just here to educate you based on my thoughts, research, working with people, what's worked, what hasn't worked, my understanding, connecting the dots, etc., etc., etc. Now, the other 5 kinds have to do with dysfunction of the metabolic pathways. You have pituitary hypofunction, which I want to talk about because it's the most common. I feel like you can relate this one to the 4 others. Thyroid underconversion from adrenal stress, excess cortisol, estrogen, etc., which can easily be regulated through nutrition. Thyroid overconversion from increased testosterone production, from things like PCOS or insulin resistance, men using gels and creams. Thyroid binding globulin elevation, which is typically seen with estrogen replacement therapy, because estrogen basically increases thyroid binding globulin, and the thyroid binds to it, leaving less free thyroid hormone, giving the illusion that there's a thyroid problem. There's not. And then thyroid resistant, which is a stress-related pattern. There's enough thyroid hormone actually being converted or made or produced, but it's not getting into the cells. Increased cortisol from stress or taking too much thyroid medication can actually cause it. The one I want to talk about, and you can study his work to read about those others. The one I want to talk about is pituitary hypofunction, because I feel like you can kind of correlate this one to all the others. The thyroid underconversion, thyroid overconversion, thyroid binding globulin elevation, and thyroid resistance. Now, Datis Karazian calls these functional hypothyroidism. I love this. He calls them functional hypothyroidism because there's not a problem with the thyroid. Basically, what he's saying is the thyroid gland itself is actually fine, right? Unlike the primary hypothyroidism. There's a problem with the thyroid gland. You need thyroid replacement therapy. What that is, I don't know. Talk to your doctor. With these, the thyroid gland's working fine, but there's actually issues with the metabolic pathways. They're impaired. That's what functional hypothyroidism is. So with pituitary hypofunction, thyroid underconversion, thyroid overconversion, all these ones I talked about, they're functional hypothyroidism. That's what a lot of people have. Based on our work and based on Broda Barnes' work, if you wake up with a low temperature and you're eating tons of food and eating tons of right food, let's say working with us for 6 months, your temperature never changes from morning to night, you have a thyroid function problem. Most of the time, when people wake up, they have a low temperature, high pulse, or low temperature, low pulse, whatever it may be, and they start changing their lifestyle and start eating the right foods, working their food frequency, and they start seeing their temperature and pulse maybe go up and down throughout the day. That's just a blood sugar regulation. That's an underconversion, overconversion issue, or whatever it may be, and it's showing you that you truly don't have a thyroid problem. It's as simple as that. You have functional hypothyroidism. And I want to talk about the pituitary hypofunction one, mainly because, now we're not doctors, we're just making this assumption. There's so many people taking supplements, we'll call them, when they really don't need them, just based off TSH values, and that's it. First of all, you need to be educated. You need to educate yourself. What is the hormone pathways? What do they do? What is a normal thyroid panel? What does this medication do? If I'm putting it in my body, what is my physiology? How is it going to affect me? Too many people are putting things in their body without educating themselves. And they're putting things in their body based on one little single lab value and their doctor telling them to. So what I'm saying is get educated. So what can cause pituitary hypofunction? Remember, the pituitary signals the thyroid. Chronic stressors are the root of this pattern. They fatigue the pituitary and the thyroid gland is actually fine. Oh, just to rewind it a little bit. Dr. Karazin says, which we fully agree with, which Dr. Schwarzman agreed with, that all cases of functional hypothyroidism, these 5, or if you want to make up more on your own, that's fine, of impaired metabolic pathways, depressed thyroid activity, no problem with the thyroid, just a problem with the metabolic pathway, can all be nutritionally supported without the use of medication. I'm just quoting him. I'm not saying that. I agree with it 100%. So, pituitary hypofunction. Chronic stressors are the root of this. Fatigue the pituitary, thyroid's fine. Any stress, busy lifestyle, overdoing it, poor nutrition, exceeding more, you're taking in less than what you're putting out, per se. Lack of sleep, etc., etc. Any stress can cause pituitary hypofunction. Pregnancy, it amplifies this because when you're pregnant, you have amplified demands on the body and the hormonal system. And if you're not meeting that nutritionally, or with how you live your life, and you're still trying to do the same thing, of course, you're going to create a stress, which is going to fatigue the pituitary. The most important, and that's where you can kind of correlate the overconversion, the underconversion, etc., because you're producing excess cortisol, estrogen, insulin, all these things are chronic stressors and hormonal influences that are going to cause pituitary hypofunction. So to me, you can kind of like say there's 2 types. There's pituitary hypofunction, which causes underconversion, overconversion, etc., or primary hypothyroidism. Then the third, which I find the most important, this is why I want to talk about this one, is inappropriate use of thyroid medication. This is interesting because based on our experience, I would say that in 12, 13, whatever, I don't even know how many years we've been doing this, that I would say I've worked with, I can't even count, but less than 5 people that have been on thyroid medication that have actually needed thyroid medication. I can't tell you how many people we talk to have worked with that take it, it does nothing for me. They take it, my symptoms get worse. They take it, my hair is actually falling out more. They take it, I can't sleep. They take it, all we've done is play with my T4 and play with my T3, and we've tried going up, we've tried going down. Nothing's actually worked. I actually talked to a lady the other day that's been taking thyroid medication for 40 years. At what point do you start educating yourself and say, this is not actually working? I'm not talking about her, I'm just talking about anyone. In my opinion, if you're actually taking a thyroid medication, you need it. I would say if you're giving your body the right resources and foundation nutritionally, that possibly within 6 months you could actually heal yourself from that thyroid issue. And I only say that because I actually have seen it with one of our clients from Canada a couple years ago. She had a true thyroid issue, waking up at 95 every day. We worked together for 3 months. We worked on working with the foods, increasing her frequency, increasing her calories over time once we got a baseline. And her temperature never changed. Finally went to her doctor, got a thyroid panel. Doctor said you need thyroid medication. She didn't want to take it because she kind of didn't really like putting medications in her body. She opted for a thyroid glandular. And she actually started taking that, and along with continually doing nutrition, after about 6 to 8 months, she was able to titrate off it. Temperature went up, she felt warmer, her symptoms went away, etc., etc. So inappropriate use of thyroid medication can cause pituitary hypofunction or create the illusion that you have hypothyroidism. Too much thyroid in the system tells the cell that you don't need it. Right? Because your cells use T3 to produce carbon dioxide, water, and ATP, which is energy. We store glycogen in the liver. Liver uses glycogen to convert T4 to T3. Your cells, which are in all your tissues, use T3 to produce energy, which is what we need to sustain life, is what we need to heal, to feel good, to have energy, etc. So too much in the system, like I said, causes that thyroid resistance. I talked about that 6th type of thyroid functional hypothyroidism. But when there's too much thyroid in the system, you kind of tell your cells that you don't need it. They shut the door, and this is when the symptoms typically get worse, and you have to constantly play with your medication. You're actually creating a resistance to the medication that you don't need, but now that you're taking it, you tell your system that you don't need it, there's too much in the system, cells close the door because they can't use it anymore, and then you have to start increasing and decreasing the doses, and before you know it, years gone by, and you never really found a dose that works for you longer than 2 months. With with all the thyroid in the system or in the body, this actually signals the pituitary that it kind of tells the pituitary that it's no longer needed. It's no longer needed because there's so much thyroid in the system. So the pituitary says, well, I don't need to signal the thyroid anymore because we don't need any more thyroid hormone. And this is what causes the pituitary hypofunction and gives you the illusion that you have hypothyroidism. But the problem is possibly because how you're living, eating, or more importantly, the medication you're taking is actually exacerbating your symptoms. And typically what you see is a really low TSH on your lab, and most values are actually normal, or some of them may be low. Now, that doesn't mean all you measure is TSH. You want to make sure you're doing a full cholesterol panel. You're doing a TSH, a total T4, free thyroxine, T3 uptake, free T3, reverse T3, and thyroid antibodies. You want to look at this whole panel. But doctors will just test TSH and go, oh, you have hypothyroidism, low TSH. What if you have functional hypothyroidism? You go on the meds, you make matters worse. So hopefully you've learned something from this. More importantly, hopefully you feel a little bit more empowered to start educating yourself. Start educating yourself so you know what's going on in your body functionally, you know what's going on when it's not working, and you know what you're putting in your body and how it's going to affect it, and possibly choosing other means to heal yourself, like nutrition, and not having to take your medication. By educating yourself, you'll be able to create these conclusions and actually heal yourself. Thanks for tuning in, and I'm out of here.